And then a number of weeks ago, Helen then made her big decision. She made a big announcement in a public forum to say, I was sitting in that press room and I can never forget how I felt when she made the announcement that she'd not be availing herself for leadership. Make no mistake, I have huge respect for Helen. I think she's grown our party, she's done an exceptional job. And she's a South African that is not celebrated enough, I think. I think you read more about Helen in the critique rather than actually the incredible work that she does. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, in the famous Afrikaans term, no, hier kom 'n ding, you know. Because immediately right there and then a journalist asked me, Mr. Maimane, when are you putting in your nomination? I stopped for one moment, I said, well, fortunately, Wilmot was chairing the press conference, so he spared me the question. I then had an opportunity to go home and speak to my fairly young family. My wife is half Lebanese, she's going to be coming through here, and my kids. And we had a chance to speak about what standing for leadership of the DA would mean. And I want to bring you in because I can tell you a lot about what I stand for and what this campaign will mean. But I felt it's important to bring you at least into our lounge that day when we spoke about why we should stand. I came home that afternoon and my wife, what gave me an immediate sign is that she was very angry about the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. I've seen her angry only twice. That was the second time I've seen her that livid. And I tell you that she's half Lebanese because when Lebanese people are quite angry, the rage is incredible. I'm telling you. And as I came in, she was so upset about the xenophobic attacks and so angry that we decided as a family we'd do something about it. And so she's now spent some time really collecting goods and doing all of that. But then we realized that in fact, it's not good enough that we do our little bit, we best do more. We best understand that for many South Africans, they're looking at South Africa right now and thinking, where's this country going? What future is there for South Africa? And it was out of the context of that conversation that we thought to ourselves, look, for you and I and for our two little kids, we believe in the future of this country. We best be willing to put up our hands, as Winston Churchill once said, that you get figuratively tapped on the shoulder and asked to do something great, something fitted to your talents. And what a great moment that is when what a great time that is when that moment finds you prepared for the task, which would be your finest hour. We then considered what it would mean for our family. It meant that we'd have to commute, and of course I spend a lot of time. I'm dressed like this not because I wanted to be underdressed for Tshwane, but literally we've just come back from Limpopo, having spent a great event doing a door-to-door there. The solution for South Africa must be best epitomized in the DA. Surely all of us can agree on that. And if that is so, it doesn't matter how good you and I can sit and say, what a great party we have. And if we don't get into government, we're certainly not going to be able to rescue the future of this country. That's a fact. And so having considered all of that, having thought to myself, you know, I thought, do I have time? People have said to me, do you have years? You can wait for a few years. I said, South Africa does not have a few years. In the latest budget that got passed, it reminded me that in fact we're running out of time in this country. So I don't have the luxury to sit back and say, yeah, I'll wait, maybe 3 more years. I'm 34 now, maybe yeah, I'll be ready one day. There is no time like that. You best be willing to say, when South Africa, in the famous words, it says, ons sal antwoord op jou roepstem, ons sal offer wat jy vra. It's those moments where you sit back and you think, I best put up my hand and do something. And that's what was born, the decision to say, we'll stand for leadership of the DA. To succeed someone like Helen, who I respect immensely, meant this amazing task ahead of us. But then I thought, what do we bring to this party? Darren can tell you, when we got into the Joburg caucus and campaign there, we grew by 10%. Now, it might not sound like a lot. I went into the Joburg campaign believing we'd win. I worked like hell. We went to different places. I believed we could win. And I still believe that if we work harder, we'll win next year. But I went into the Gauteng campaign believing we could win. That's why we called the Gauteng campaign Believe. And we pushed the ANC from 64% to 53%. I still, every day, wake up thinking to myself, I think if we give ourselves enough time, we could win. I went to Nelson Mandela Bay and realized the fact that they are much closer. And I want to put my shoulder to the wheel and say, let's campaign to make sure we govern Nelson Mandela Bay. Because I want to be able to say to the president in parliament one day, You know how Cape Town is in the municipality governed by the DA? Parliament is in the municipality governed by the DA. Well, Nelson Mandela Bay, or PE, the namesake of our great hero, is in a municipality governed by the DA. And wouldn't it be great if one day we'd be able to say, your office is in a municipality governed by the DA? So this is about work. It's about, it will require every single one of us to get in. Now, the second thing is I really believe this party needs to become the only champion for non-racialism. Many people are campaigning to split us up on race-based. They want us to say we're different, we're this. That's why I have such a serious problem with xenophobia. Because further than xenophobia, it becomes racism, actually, fundamentally. Now we can't go back. The EFF are insisting on taking us backwards on the basis of race. The ANC talk non-racialism, but they don't live it. You know, when I speak to South Africans, it doesn't matter where they come from. I say to them, look, all of us want decent opportunities for our children. We want the freedoms of this country to be advanced. We want a society that is fair, that's not corrupt. That's what all of us want. That's not a race-based thing. That's a human values thing. And you know what? I want to build a party that will have people from different races come together to campaign for this country. In our diversity, we've always proven before, like in '94, when we've had enough, we vote out that government. And in this time, we will have enough again and vote out for another government. We won't replace it with a government of color. We'll replace it with a government for all South Africans. And so when I think about it, we've got to build a non-racial party. We have to fight for it. It's not easy. The ANC attacks me all the time. They say I'm a hired native and I'm a this. And I want to tell them, we're not building a party for black people. We're not building a party for white people or Indian people or colored people. We're building a party for all South Africans. Yes. And we must fight for that. But then furthermore, the third reason I thought about it is that we've got to be a party that responds to the economy of this country. I have a cousin. He's black for obvious reasons, because my cousins wouldn't. But here's the thing about him, you know, here he is, he's a young person, he's in his 20s, he's got a very bad education, because actually the ANC's greatest crime is not in Nkandla. Yeah. It's education. Yeah. They have failed the education system of this country. He's been involved with drugs, I know that for a fact, and I've had to bail him out of prison, and he can't find work. The sad bit is that he represents the 66% of young people who cannot find work. And in the 36% of the people in this country, 2/3 of them who can't find work are young people. We must be a party that speaks for those. My candidacy is about, I want to champion the rights of South Africans who cannot find work. Because if we don't make it so that we advance, we break down the Berlin Wall, as I call it, of those who are inside the economy and those who are outside of it, South Africa will always become a nation that is unstable. So, there's a lot we can do inside our party. I celebrate people like Mike Mkari, who's an activist. We've got to make sure our activists can be able to stand before people and give them a message that's compelling. They must sit down and communicate. When we adopt the values charter at Congress now and then put a vision forward, we must have activists that are able to communicate that. We must make sure that, you know what most people say to me? They say, we don't vote for the DA because we don't know enough about the DA. And one of the things that I'm really conscious about doing is making sure that post our big meetings, where there's a federal council, federal executive, that we have some form of post briefing. Because if I ask people who's the chairman of the federal council, people don't know. They only know one person in the DA. They know Helen Zille, and that's not good enough. Not that Helen Zille isn't good enough, but they must know more about the DA. They must know where we stand. And so I'm very much open to that as an approach to the party. So we have a choice. You have a choice on the 9th and 10th of May. You may sit down and say, hey, who do I vote for? It's actually an STV system. There's 4 candidates. I haven't met the other 2. It might surprise you. I have met one.
So who do we put in 4?
Hey, if you want to know who you put in 4, I think it starts with a W, it ends. Anyways, no, I want to go in there. Let me not go there. Look, I have huge respect for Dr. James. I respect him. I've worked with him. I just think we can do better. I think I can work harder I've worked as hard as most people in this party. I work harder. I think we can take this party forward. But I'm doing this for one simple reason, is that I believe, like I've outlined so many things, but that we'll win, if we got to win more metros next year. But not so that we can sit back and say, wow, the DA is good. But that one day, God willing, we can sit down in 2019 and actually have a DA president in this country. So my ask is that you put me at number 1 at Federal Council.
Not across.
At our Federal Congress, not across. The cross won't help us much. But then hopefully, in the lineage of so many of the great leaders of this party, I think about Helen Suzman, I've taken the principle that says we've got to be on site. And you can remember in the Believe campaign, I went door to door. I traveled more kilometers than anybody else. We went there. And I remember Tony Leon having helped us stand on opposition and know that we must be a party that stands for opposition. And that Helen Zille has brought us into government. I would hope I can contribute to their story, to their journey, to really make sure we become a party of national government. So that's a lot of hard work, but I ask you to be a part of that dream. We don't have a lot of time. It's about rolling up our sleeves and getting in there to make sure South Africa can experience its second transition, and it's this second transition, that power can move from one party to the next without intimidation, and may that party be us. So thank you very much for the support. In response to your question, I think it's an important question. Firstly, I think there's a historical backgrounds between both here, Wilmot and I, that we share that are different, actually. The first key distinguisher is that I share a history where I've seen firsthand what poverty looks like. I understand that. I'm not apologetic about it, I get it. I get what it's like to have to work hard to try and get through studying and making sure that you get your first degree. I did my degree through UNISA, right here. Didn't have much money, I paid for it. And that was the only way I could get through it. That gave me a start. And now today, 2 master's degrees later, I can be most grateful that it was just through sheer opportunity and hard work. So I get that. Is that where Dr. James and I are different. For example, our philosophical views on race are different. Let me give you an example. I always say to people, and I'll say it to Tash, I'll say it to anybody else, that if you don't see that I'm black, you actually don't see me. I don't want to build a society where people have the right to stand up and say we are colorblind. That's dangerous. Because I must be able to see the difference in people, not to oppress, but to celebrate diversity. And so I see that we're different. Whereas there are and so in terms of interventions, I want legislation that makes sure that race does not become a proxy for disadvantage in a long period of time. We must make sure we evaluate all these things every 5 years to make sure opportunity is given to everybody. And I speak as someone whose kids are colored as a point of example. That's a start. So we have a different philosophical view on race. The second issue is that the key difference is that I don't say I'm going to fundraise, I actually do fundraise. I've raised, honestly, there are only 2 other people in this party who raise more money than me, and none of them are standing for a position. That's the first. So actually I've learned the current experience of being able to develop a financial network, and I believe the future of the DA must be able to get into donors who, let's be honest, there are many people, and I don't want to give their names away, that I'm starting to make contact with who are black, very successful business people that we must be able to tap into to create the financial resource. That's the second thing. The third thing is actually, I have been through being a councillor. And I know what councillors go through. I get what a council does. And I get what campaigning for a council looks like. I don't talk about we will grow. I've worked hard to grow. And part of growth means language has to be important. How we communicate to voters must be important. What we say to voters, our message, our campaigning, our activism. So one of the things I want to be deliberate to make sure the DA does going forward is that we must spend more time in communities. That's the point I'm wanting to highlight. So the difference is here, we mustn't just talk about it. We must train our activists, give them the material, make sure it's available in all languages, they can go out in communities and make sure. The fifth thing is that obviously I want to open the party, not shut it down. I want to be clear. I want for everybody to have access to all the leaders, to have access to FedEx, to have access. Because one of the things that are problematic is that we've seen these leaks that are coming out of FedEx. Because I think sometimes people don't gain access to the knowledge pool. I'm saying I want to be clear. At the end of every FedEx, we must tell the people, this is what FedEx discussed. These are the things that we decided. And so that if anyone comes up with contradictory information, you can know it's contradictory. Does that make sense? It's the same for Federal Council. And then the last and most critical thing is that I don't think we've communicated enough care as a party. What makes us angry as a party? If I were to ask you, what makes the DA angry? You could say the DA is angry about the Constitution being violated. We're willing to walk out of Parliament for the Constitution being violated, right? That's me. We led the walk out of Parliament, and I agree, it was right. It was the thing that we must do. But why don't we get angry enough when the matric results of this country come back and all we focus on is just the percentage passed, not the quality of education? Why doesn't that make us angry? Why doesn't it make us angry when in fact we go around and more people are not finding work? So the distinctions that I want to bring to this party is to change the focus of our anger. Because we get angry about some things, and when we talk about the Constitution, people are like, yeah, we get the Constitution. But we must be angry about the unemployed, we must be angry about poverty, we must be angry about the fact that all of those things must really rile us up as a party, if we're willing to really govern this country in the way that it is. So I think for me, those are the things I stand for. That's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on racialism. I'm focused on economic growth. I want to build an inclusive economy, and I want to be clear in my head that the operation that the DA puts together responds to that, where we have activists who can sit down, talk to people and communicate their message. That's the key distinguisher for me.